Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Why do we do it? I don't know why we do it. I mean, I get paid to go and write about Spurs. You all pay your money to go and watch stuff like that. It's so frustrating. It's so incredibly frustrating. Um, it's just kind of one tough experience after another. And I think the biggest problem for Thomas Frank right now is that Tottenham Hotspur, they just haven't improved under him at this point. I mean, they currently sit in 10th place in the Premier League table. They've got 18 points to their name, scored 21 goals, and they've conceded 16 after 13 matches. I look back, exactly the same stage as last season in the Premier League. They'd scored 7 more goals. They can let in 2 fewer, and they had 2 more points to their name. They're in 7th place. This is the problem. It is not improving things right now. I'm got to only hope that for short-term pain there's some long-term gain because it doesn't feel like it right now. And look, if Arsenal win at Chelsea today, this will be by the time it comes out, Spurs will be almost as far away from the top of the Premier League table with 14 points away as they'll be from the bottom side Wolves, who are a game in hand and are currently 16 points behind. It's just madness because, we know, look, when a club makes a managerial change, they do so because they believe they can improve what they already have. And I guess Frank has a history of starting slowly at both Brøndby and Brentford. Um, and maybe his solid early weeks at Spurs kind of postpone the inevitable, postpone that kind of awkward honeymoon that he normally has at most clubs. But the trouble is, a club like Tottenham, he's not going to have a prolonged amount of time to kind of see through that and get through that. Um, Especially when it's so difficult to watch Tottenham right now. It's not an enjoyable experience. It's just not. It doesn't feel better than some of the tough points of last season at all. I mean, Opta put out this stat after the game saying that this latest defeat, Spurs averaging at currently just 9.5 shots and 3.2 shots on target per match in the Premier League this season. And both of those are their lowest averages on record in a single season since 2003 2004. It's not good. It's not good football. If you're not producing enough shots in a game, that's what football's about. Football is about scoring goals. Um, you know, and this felt like another night when the connection with the fans was as broken as ever. I think, if anything, the boos that were sent to Vicario, which we'll speak about, the noise at both half time and full time, and the cheers for the Mohamed Kudus goal, probably the only real shows of emotion from a fan base that is just so apathetic to it all. It's not hard to see why, really, because they've kind of been served up slop when they're paying Michelin star prices. And you can understand this growing frustration. And I'm not going to kind of claim that the atmosphere in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is amazing, but I think a lot of that has just comes from being beaten down over the recent years. I mean, last night, 60,546 officially. I'm not entirely sure it was the actual number, bearing in mind the number of empty seats we could see, but that's the number who apparently turned up, and those who turned up are clearly glutton for punishment because Spurs have now, in that stadium, just won 3 of their past 21 home league matches. It's tough to justify coming and paying money to come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to watch Tottenham play in 2025. They've won 3 times in 2025 in the league at home. That's disgusting. That's your own paying fans, your home crowd, and you're asking them to pay for garbage. It's just, unless you're an away fan, it's not the most enjoyable day out. For home fans, you could tourists coming to watch Spurs, sorry, not the home fans, tourists could come and think it's a London dungeon. It's not a nice experience. And look, on this occasion, they had to watch Spurs go down 2-0 within 6 minutes. Another record for your collection here. It's the earliest that Spurs have ever conceded 2 goals in a Premier League home match. We love to break the records, not always the good ones. Oh, my word. I mean, the goals. Kenny Tete's shot deflected off a doggy, went in the bottom right corner. It all came from a poor Danso header. Danso filling in for the suspended Christian Romero. Danso headed it out. There was just no logic behind the header. He kind of headed it towards the Fulham players rather than Bergvall or anyone that was to his left-hand side. And they broke up the pitch. And then Bergvall himself kind of slipped, couldn't quite intercept the pass that went to Tete, and he hits the shot that hits Udoghi's heel, I think it was, and goes into the net. Then we had the Vicario moment. He'd done well. It was only 3 minutes later. He kind of runs out, comes out of his box, intercepts the ball with his feet, does well when you're thinking, brilliant, okay, just knock it out. Knock it out, Vic. Knock it. Oh, Vic. And he just hit this dreadful weak pass down the byline or the touchline. And it just kind of, I can't remember, it came back in, someone got it came back in, and then Destiny Doggy slipped as Harry Wilson hits, which, to be fair, is a brilliant curling finish from the touchline that goes all the way into the net. And I don't know why nobody was covering the net. There is no goalkeeper in that net. So it would maybe be wise for someone to at least stand near it. But no, this is Tottenham. They don't do the obvious. And the ball sails into the net. So then we had the awkwardness of Vicario being booed the next 2 times the ball was played back to him. When he touched it, he was booed. And then actually when there was another moment a few minutes later, he kind of, to be fair to him, showed the character to rush out again and do the same, but this time kicked it out into touch. And he got sarcastically cheered for it. Look, my views on Vicario, he's saved Spurs so many times this season. He really has. It could have been a hell of a lot worse season it was without Guillermo Vicario between the sticks. It just makes uncomfortable viewing. You know my opinions on booing your own players, individuals. It was all very reminiscent of Davinson Sanchez. Remember back in 2023, wasn't it? Bournemouth game. And he got booed after making a couple of mistakes. Actually, both weren't his fault, I remember on the day. And he eventually got subbed in, and you saw him look like just distraught looking on the bench. And I looked back to the quote that day because I remember reporting on it. And Hugo Lloris said, "I've never seen this in my career. I really feel bad for Davinson. He's a teammate, a friend, and he's been fighting for this club for many, many years now. It's just sad. The story is sad for the club, for the fans, for the player. It's something you don't want to see in football." Here we are 2.5 years on, and it's happening again. Vicario posted on Instagram after the game, said, "I take full responsibility for the second goal we conceded. Moments like this hurt, especially when the results aren't going our way. Now more than ever, it's time to fight even harder and give everything for this club." And to be fair to him, again, he fronted up afterwards. He did an interview. He asked to do an interview for Spurs Play. So he did their interview for them. He apologised to the fans. Another week, another apology, I know. And then he went on Sky Sports and spoke as well. And on that, he said, he was asked about the boos, and he said, "It's part of football. So I'm a big man. I'm quite older. We cannot be influenced by the situation in the stands. The fans have the right to do what they think, and probably it's on us to stay more calm and focus more on ourselves because we know our game plan and our strengths. We are lacking a little bit of composure to overturn the result. Today it's a bad defeat and tough to accept." And to be honest, Fulham could have been further ahead at the start. I think it was Chukwueze hit the left-hand post, I think it was, if I remember correctly. Mickey van der Ven did a brilliant tackle on the same player who had rounded Vicario. It looked like it was the third goal, and he just came out of nowhere to make this great tackle. Obviously, Spurs grabbed one back through Kudus, but they just kind of created this mountain for themselves, which, the fans just weren't having any of it. It was such a... We said this earlier in the week, a few reporters, we were talking about it, and it was always going to be the case that if this game didn't go the right way, that stadium was going to become a very unpleasant place to be in. And it just kind of was. Nobody really kind of got going. And I mean, there was this moment that Lucas Bergvall, who'd actually had a header cleared off the goal line after the goal, he went over to the crowd before a second half corner's been taken. He did the classic thing that players do of, come on. And there was this kind of for about half a second, and just everyone's just like, ugh. And I think look, Spurs are trying to rescue a draw at home against Fulham. You know, the team with the worst away record in the Premier League, coming to the team with the second worst home record in the Premier League. And Dr. Tottenham was there, but he only had one prescription available. And of course, no self-medication when it comes to Dr. Tottenham. He's just a really giving, generous doctor. It was just awful to kind of sit and watch. And amid the halftime boos, actually, there was this little moment where before the players came in, they had a little bit of a huddle on the pitch, like a team talk, as it were. And both Bergvall and Mickey van der Ven, you could see them saying things in the group. And I think it probably says plenty about the problems in the team right now. That a teenager, a 19-year-old, is the one trying to G them up for the second half. It's not good. I don't know what I feel about that little huddle, really, to be honest. There's different ways of looking at it. Some people have told me that Thomas Frank kind of encourages that and he wants the players to do that. And I think he maybe mentioned that perhaps when I was away a few weeks back. There's another part of me that doesn't know all of that, so I'm going to feign ignorance. And it kind of feels a little bit like they're having to sort themselves out before they go to the manager or sort out their own message. I don't know. But, you know, I don't think it's a bad thing, communication, but it was strange to see this teenager being one of the vocal people within that group. And yeah, I mean, we had boos coming down at the end of the game as well. There was a little part where I thought, they might not be boos. Oh, sorry, I think it was half time. I thought they might not be boos because they were having a little run of trying to get the ball towards the goal. And sometimes that kind of makes people forget that they were going to boo. But at the end, there was definitely going to be boos. And the tannoy played out, as is often the case in a defeat. That song, it's Munich by Editors. I think my brain is now conditioned to know that means Tottenham pain. You know, how you can kind of train things psychologically into your head associated with music and things like that. Weird story. Whenever I hear Madness songs, I feel sick. And the reason is I went on a school holiday to France. I think it was a skiing holiday. I can't remember what it was. Many years ago. And on the coach, it was a coach trip all the way to France. And someone put in the cassette player a Madness album. And it was 36 hours of driving, Madness all the way. And it made me kind of feel like travel sick, which I don't normally get in life. So now whenever I hear Madness, I feel a bit sick. So if you're ever near me, please don't put Madness on. You'll see me feeling a bit like, ugh. But yeah, now I associate this song that they seem to play always after a defeat with pain, with just feeling glum about Tottenham. And actually, I looked up the lyrics because I thought I heard it. I thought that's a bit weird. And the lyrics are, some of them include, people are fragile things, you should know by now, be careful what you put them through. It is literally Tottenham, in words. I don't know whether that's just fitting or really poorly thought out by Spurs to have that as a song after a game. I don't know. But then we had this weird moment. The reason I bring up the song as well is we had that moment with the song and the Spurs players they didn't almost want to go over to the south stand. They just kind of stayed around the centre circle going like, kind of thing. There was a moment where I think Bergvall thought about it and he looked at Vicario and he kind of was like, no, maybe I won't. Because it was only a few weeks ago that Vicario was over there with Bergvall, obviously a concussed teenager being kind of abused by this person and a bad person, as Vicario said when I asked him about it. We still don't really know why. I don't know whether he thought Bergvall just decided, I'm going to go off the pitch, even though it was clearly he didn't want to come off the pitch and was being told. But anyway, that's a couple of weeks ago. And then we had this really odd moment last night. In that moment, really, where Bergvall was like a bit unsure about whether he was going to go over and applaud, Pedro Porro, who'd stormed down the tunnel at the final whistle, came back onto the pitch, only to kind of go over to Bergvall, shout at him, and it looked like he was saying, don't applaud the fans, like, get in. And as he was kind of going down the tunnel, he kind of went off. I think Sarr almost told him to go away. And he went down the pitch and he kind of whipped his shirt off. Just, I'm not saying he threw it like Hossam Ghali style or anything like that. Another player that was booed back in the day. But he and the doggy both kind of took their top, the doggy just took it off normally, and the kind of Porro took it off. He was about to strangle someone with it. And look, he'd had a stinker of a match, Porro. He'd absolutely, I thought it was awful. He'd struggled his crosses. Only three of the 19 crosses he put in found someone in a Tottenham shirt. And he needed to be bailed out by Van de Ven. That great tackle came after he'd allowed Chukwueze to go through. He kind of had the ball and looked like he had it, and then just made a complete hash of it and let him go through. So yeah, it looked all so awful and messy. And there was a moment when Van de Ven was like the last person. He was kind of looked like he was thinking, "Do I go over there?" And he probably thought, "Is it worth the hassle? Am I just going to get absolutely abused if I go over there?" Yeah, it's not a pleasant place to be, the Spurs Stadium right now. And I'm not saying that's the fans, that's the team, that's the club. And obviously, the fans are frustrated and they're not playing their part, I guess, in that sense of they feel like they've been let down. And you can sense that in the stands. That's what I mean. And then there's the boos individually, which we'll speak about in a minute. Which, yeah, I'm not saying anything brand new about this. You know exactly my thoughts on when individuals are booed and how it just doesn't help anybody. I get it comes from a place of frustration, but I also just think it's kind of shooting yourself in the foot because you're not actually helping that individual in any way, shape, or form. If anything, you're probably more likely to make them worse. It's just not something I'd ever done as a fan myself, that's all. And, everyone pays their money, they're entitled to do what they want to do. It's just not what I would do. And I'm always very reticent to kind of tell people they're right or wrong, especially when they pay money and I don't. I go and cover these games, I get paid to cover these games. So I'm always wary of doing that. I'm just saying what I would do in that situation. So Thomas Frank, he was keen to distinguish between the two different kind of boos that we had in and around the game. He spoke about the game, so definitely conceding 2 goals in 6 minutes gives us a mountain to climb. I think it is the classic thing that you're in a bad spell or a tough spell, things go against you. First one is a deflected shot, and the second one is a mistake from Vicario. It happens. I didn't like how the fans reacted to that. They booed at him straight after, and also 3 or 4 times when he was on the ball. For me, that's unacceptable. They can't be true Tottenham fans. Booing after the game, that's fair, no problem. But when we're playing, we need to be together. If we turn it around, we need to do it together. That is hugely important for me. You see, there's 2 elements to that answer for me. And we spoke about his press conference in the last one. I actually wrote a piece about, after doing the video, I wrote a piece about his press conferences, kind of just saying that I think he's such a well-intentioned guy. I think sometimes his honesty gets away from him. And I wonder, I don't know, let me know your views on this. I'm really fascinated to know how the just Spurs fans feel about this, because I think I'd agree with him absolutely to say that, he didn't like it. I think that's fair enough. And he can say it's unacceptable. I don't think that's an issue as well. I think the part where he stepped into a dodgy territory is when he said they can't be true Tottenham fans. Because you're going from saying what you're doing I don't believe in and it's wrong, into an area where you're saying, you're diminishing them and you're saying that they're not a true Tottenham fan. And probably these Tottenham fans are maybe not his biggest fans right now. To tell them they're not true Tottenham fans is only going to enrage them further. So I think I appreciate and I actually quite respect the fact that he's come out backing his goalkeeper. I'm sure Vicario will feel exactly the same and the team will feel the same. But he is also at the same time driving a wedge between him and a section of the fan base at a time when he needs as much support as he can get, because it's not good right now. And he was in the first time a mood where he was growing in irritation as the press conference went on. We haven't seen that yet. And I was on the end a little bit of it. I wouldn't say I got particular irritation. I think it was more polite irritation of, you're annoying me, leave me alone, but with a smile. Whereas I think he got a little bit different with another reporter, because he'd selected this weird formation. I was really excited when I saw the start lineup. I was like, Graham Berg, Valenray, yes. And I think that'd have been a nice thing for the fans to latch onto and everything. But the formation was weird. I promise you, this is exactly what happened. All the journalists were watching, looking at the pitch, and we could not work out what the formation was. And that's quite rare. Normally, it settles quite quickly within the first 2-3 minutes. You can tell exactly what that formation is. We didn't have a clue. Not an idea. Because every time we were like, oh, okay, it's a diamond? No, it's not a diamond. Is it a 4-3-3? No, there's no one on the left. And we were trying to work, is it a 4, like, almost like a 2-2-2 kind of thing? It's like, no, it's not really that either. And what it was, I think it was like a broken 4-3-3 in terms of it was lopsided. So you had your three in the middle, but then up front, you kind of had Richarlison, Kalumawani, and Kudus, but Kudus was on the right wing. And Richarlison was playing through the centre with Kalumawani. There was nobody on the left in front of Desti Udogie. And it made Spurs very predictable. Fulham knew they could get down that side, and they knew that Spurs were just going to pass the ball out to Porro and Kudus every single time they got it, and which is exactly what happened. So I kind of just was starting the question. I kind of said to Thomas Frank, your formation, can you talk about it a little bit? Because it looked a bit overloaded on the right, and it didn't seem like you almost had a left side to the pitch. And he just went, that's true. And he just stopped. He was like, ooh, okay, you're going to stop there. That's it. And I kind of said, well, can you explain why you decided to go with that? To which he said, well, I wanted two strikers in and around each other, which looked good at times. But of course, the game plan was definitely way more difficult after 2-0. And he stopped. It's like, this is what he kind of normally gives me quite long answers. And actually, I think it was George Sessions from PA followed that up later. And he said, kind of just asked more about that formation and did it make Spurs a bit more predictable? And he said, I think for me, the first half was clearly we were rushing things too much. When we're going in behind, when we shouldn't go in behind, we were playing in the middle when we shouldn't play in the middle, and all those bits because we were rushing too much. I think it's difficult to judge the first half. Of course, it's part of everything, and it looked much better second half, and also before I made 3 changes. And I kind of, in that, it's almost like he's saying, yeah, it was working, and I changed it and ruined it. Because his substitutions were pants. They did. I mean, again, I do think I don't want to make this sound like I'm just going, "Oh, Thomas Frank, it's all your fault," because the players were rubbish. Players, as often happens with managers, they really let them down. They played some dreadful stuff, made some dreadful decisions. In any other game, and Fulham didn't, after a little flurry in the first half where they could have been 3 or 4 up. They didn't really do anything for the rest of the game. Spurs kind of had the game, I loathe to say, in control when they're losing it, but they certainly kind of had control of possession, they had control of the chances. I think they had like 14 shots at goal, I think it was, and only 2 on target, which says it's a lot as well. But yeah, it was, I guess in his own words, if he's saying about the changes not working, that's true. And then he had this back and forth with another reporter about the boos in the game. And I'm kind of read out the way this was said because you can kind of get the idea of it then. Excuse me. The reporter asks, with the fans booing during the game, do you understand the frustration? Yeah, but I think we need to be clear on what I talked about. I talked about Vic that I didn't like. That is unacceptable. You can't be after one player. So the reporter tried to rephrase the question. He said, as he was kind of talking, and so Thomas Frank went, let me finish. I think that it's very important because if you want anyone to perform, you need to be behind them. In my opinion, that's what you've got to get people to perform in the best possible way. After the game, no problem. So the journalist tried again to do the rephrasing he was trying to do. He said, I guess maybe it's part of the same thing in that you want to come out and put on a big performance, get a big win, and with 8 minutes, the team's 2-0 down. And then Thomas Frank interrupted him and said, 6 minutes. So what's your question then? So it's 6 minutes. So your question is what? Like that. It was like, oh, what is all this about? Because they might have scored after 6 minutes, but they probably didn't kick off again after 8. So the reporter tried again. Do you understand the fans' frustration after 8 minutes when the team is 2-0 down? And he said, of course I understand. That's not what I said. Completely understand the frustration when it's not working. I think we're all a bit that it's going against us and it's frustrating in many ways. So that I understand. No problem. And then I noticed this. The reporter didn't. I don't like to name reporters when it's kind of not an unpleasant thing, but a non-positive thing. But as Thomas Frank was leaving the press conference, he glared at that reporter, really glared at them. He gave us all a bit of a look, but he particularly glared at that reporter as he walked away. This was definitely the first time I've seen him. I don't want to say rattled. I hate that. I hate it when people kind of make out like they've achieved something, like they've annoyed him. Nobody set out to rattle him in any way. I just think it's the first time I've seen him start to get irritated and maybe let his emotions come closer to the surface. Excuse me, lingering after effects of the throat infection I had last week. And recording this very, very late at a ridiculous hour. You don't even want to know what the hour is. Let's just put it this way, it's almost morning. And look, some people will say that Frank's support for Vicario is great. That's what he should do. Others might call it deflecting from the poor performance and maybe trying to thrust the spotlight onto one particular thing, which some managers do. I think it's probably more the former for me. Otherwise, very few players came out of this game with any credit. I'd say it was mostly about individual errors. I think Randall Colomwani, again, I thought it looked quite good in moments. He probably looked the one who had the most endeavour, the most dangerous on the ball. He had back heel that just went wide, and he had another shot in the box as well that couldn't get on target. It was deflected wide. Archie Gray, I didn't feel he really understood his role in this setup because it was a bit of a weird formation in the first half. But actually, second half, I thought he was getting to grips with it and he was taken off. But I kind of also understand that he's made back-to-back starts after not playing any football for a fair while. So I kind of understood that. Bergvall had the best pass success rate on the pitch, 97%, even though he was trying to force matters with some of his passing. Lovely assist for Kudus. Played this ball over the top, really nice into his path. And I kind of felt Spurs lost something when he went off. I mean, fair play to George from PA. He said, don't make this up, it's a really bad one. And I was trying to say, well, I kind of feel a bit like Archie. Lucas is running around looking a bit leggy, and I think he hasn't played too much football. And I can kind of see they want to get some fresh legs, and Sarr maybe would more be one to try and get into the box, get on the end of things. But actually, I think George was right in the terms of Bergvall. They missed his passing. As soon as he went off, no one was trying to play between the lines at all. Others pretty much were subpar. Richarlison limped around a bit and just didn't really impact anything. I actually felt Kudus, although he scored a beautiful goal, a kind of a half-volleyed effort that the keeper could only kind of push into his own net. I thought the rest of his game was really poor, to be honest. He kind of huffed and puffed. He did that thing where sometimes really good dribblers of the ball will do when he beat one man and he'd come back and try and beat him again rather than just continuing directly and trying to get into the box or something. His crossing was worse than Porro's. Only 2 of his 16 attempts reached someone in a Spurs shirt. It's a shame because he was like the shining light at the start of the season, Kudus. But he hasn't recorded an assist in almost 2 months. The goal today was his first since early October. So it just feels like with the team losing their rhythm, so is he, which is a shame because he's a hell of a player. He's got so much ability, and strength as well. But yeah, formation didn't work at all. If anything, I probably would have liked to have seen, if you're going to do 2 up front, maybe him up front with Randall Colomwani. The team that I would have liked to see, I did a predicted team what I thought Thomas Frank would do. I think it was 2 off on it. But the one I would have liked to have seen was the same midfield. It's Paulinho behind Graham Bergwell. But up front, I had Kudus, Colomwani and Xavi. I would have liked to have seen that as a trio to have a little bit of width, but also Xavi could come in when needed. And I think he would have dovetailed a little bit with Udogie a bit better. I can say it was a better formation now, only because the one that was put out there was pretty dreadful. I was talking to another reporter on the train home back from Northumberland Park, and it's just, even as reporters, it's kind of feeling like a bit draining again. And this is the same feeling watching the matches, especially the home ones, as it was towards the end of the season when the focus was kind of in the Europa League and we were just expecting to go to watch Spurs lose in the Premier League, which it's not good. It is draining having to kind of, I can't even imagine what it's like just going as a fan. That must be rubbish enough when you're paying and going to see that. But, we're having a kind of, feels like we're writing the same things. We have to talk about similar things. And we want to write about positive things. I want to write about, I'm a Spurs fan as well. So I've got that kind of added element to it. So I'm just going to have a quick drink because this is going to kill me. Spurs glass as well, although the logo is kind of almost gone. Don't know if you can see that in the light. Excuse me, very unprofessional, but I'm just going to cough all over you for the rest of it, and which you won't like. It's even worse. As a Spurs fan as well, I kind of get the pain when it's rubbish on top of owning a right about it. But that's why I love the other elements when they're doing well. It's just so enjoyable because you can really enjoy it. You can relish writing about stuff like that and talking about it. And right now, it's a club where there's no real harmony. It just doesn't feel there's any harmony at all. You've got players shouting at each other on the pitch after games. You've got fans booing their own players. I mean, the club's £51 million summer signing playmaker hasn't started the past 3 matches and didn't really put forward his case when he came on. I thought he was pretty dreadful, actually, Xavi, when he came on. In one decent moment where he got in and had a shot, but it was actually really well blocked and sent away. I think it was from one of Porro's successful crosses, actually. It just feels like Thomas Frank is yet to get a handle on things. Like he really needs to. He's had 3 defeats in a week after the international break. Any drops of positivity within the PSG defeat have just been kind of flushed away by Fulham. Next up, we've got a trip to inform Newcastle, who walloped Everton, was it 4-1 today? With some lovely goals, actually. Well, one lovely goal and one dreadful goal that Pickford let through his legs. And then comes a visit of Brentford, who it's got to be a source of a bit of embarrassment for Thomas Frank. They sit above him. His old club sit above him, and that is not a good look at all. And I think if he has a week where, you go to Newcastle, and I think they've beaten Spurs last 4 times, so there's a high level of probability that they can beat Spurs again, especially at St James's Park, and especially if Spurs are vulnerable at conceding early goals. We know what's happened there in recent seasons. And then if he loses to his old team, I think, unfortunately, that the kind of pressure, someone just turns that dial up, doesn't it? It starts to really go up, and I wouldn't. Surely Spurs have to back their man. I surely would have to. Otherwise, especially because I think otherwise their summer change that they made, replacing Postecoglou. Of course the terrible Premier League placing, but obviously a trophy winner, and to make that big decision of finally winning a trophy after 17 years and then sacking the man to do it, I don't think you can allow that to end with that change making the team worse, because it reflects on everything they're doing and every process they've put in and all this hierarchy and decision-making team. And look, Vinay Venkatesham, the CEO, kind of has a reputation for patience, and I guess Mikel Arteta is currently the beneficiary of that. We're seeing a man who had a lot of patience given to him by Vinay Venkatesham during the really tough early years, and now they're top of the table, unfortunately. But look, ultimately, Thomas Frank needs to show more. He needs to, I think, not only on the pitch, but I think I'd be a little bit worried for him off the pitch if he kind of shows this irritation with some aspects of the fan base and the media as well. I'm not saying I'm the type of person that's going to go, I hate you now, I'm going to write that you're a bad man. It's not how it works. And that's not how 99% of journalists work. But I certainly know some journalists out there that just get put off by managers. And I think maybe there's a natural thing of you can root for a manager and that helps you a little bit more and it helps that manager when you're kind of reporting on them. And sometimes, I'm guessing with some people, and I'm definitely can swear I'm not like this, but if a manager can be a bit difficult with you, maybe you've got a shorter fuse for context and explaining things, perhaps. I'm not saying that's the proper objective way to go about it, but maybe sometimes it's a natural human nature. And I think he'll also have that with the fans. And if he starts digging out the fans, and you may well say he's right in this, I still think the terminology of saying they're not true Spurs fans was just that step too far. It's a bit like when Postecoglou towards the end did the ear cupping after the goal that never was, and things like that. Little things that just aren't necessary because it just drives that wedge. I thought it was quite interesting that Vaccaro came out afterwards to just apologise. He didn't dig out the fans or anything. He actually kind of took it and then just said, because I think he's probably doing it for the sake of the players and trying to get that little bit of harmony. So yeah, and also I think it's got to stop pointing back towards the 17th place finish, especially while right now his numbers are tracking below what ended up as a 17th place finish. So you don't really want to draw attention to that either. Because look, Lewis family, there's claims that they're going to back the club in the transfer window in January, and I know that feels like a lifetime away right now with everything that's happening, but I think Thomas Frank needs to prove that any signings that are made are safe in his hands, because you don't want to get to a stage where it's like, oh, do we really spend on him? Ooh, kind of thing. That's not what anyone needs, because we need big winter reinforcements, one or two winter reinforcements, I was going to say. And I mean, you look back at the summer signings from last summer, he's only playing 3 of them regularly. And it's we're at that stage now where, the early stage of the season, you can kind of say, oh, look who's playing better, look he's done it with this. And now I think we'll flip back to the situation where you're kind of looking at it, you're like, ooh, who's he actually improved? And this is the problem. I mean, I think Van de Ven in moments has definitely shown that he's kind of gone on another level, but if you want to play devil's advocate, maybe you'd argue maybe he would have moved on a level anyway because he's naturally getting older and more experienced. But it's quite difficult. There's a few players that feel like they've gone backwards a bit. I feel like probably Porro and Bentancur feel like they've gone backwards a bit. Obviously, Romero wasn't involved. I saw Romero. Romero walked through the corridor right past the media area as we were coming out at half-time. It's difficult. Again, another thing in the comments. Tell me, please do, who you think he's improved this season out of the players that are there. I think Matisse Tell's kicked on, but I think he would probably be quite wary of giving that kudos to Thomas Frank, in that he's picked him in his Euro squad. He hasn't been using it. He definitely needs more game time. Came on right at the end today. I don't think he even picked the ball up or got the ball. Maybe argue Odebear's pushed on. It is so difficult. I'm trying to think of players. I am struggling, and that's not a good thing. And I know it's still early days, so could you see a huge change in them? At this point, I don't know. But then I guess first 10 games or so, whatever it was, of Postecoglou's first season, we were all like, oh, look what he's done with Basuma, look how Maddison's fine, blah, blah, blah. And you could argue some of those players went backwards. Certainly Basuma did. So maybe it's not a big enough sample size. Perhaps I'm being too harsh there. But yeah, let me know. It just feels like there's a huge week ahead now for this kind of new iteration of Tottenham Hotspur. The fans are drained. We're all a bit drained already. We're only 3 months into a season, which is no good. I think, we saw attendances start to dip last season, and I fear that if these home performances keep going on like this, they're going to continue to do that as well this one. Some of the players, look a little bit fed up. They look a bit fed up kind of playing with it. I've always felt there's a little bit of an uneasy relationship between the players and the fans. That's never good for a football club. Kind of felt like last season it was going that way. They were getting a lot of stick for the performances. They were getting some kind of abuse out of them from the crowds. They were just having to go up and take a lot of kind of unhappy paying customers, as it were, shouting at them. And then I felt like the trophy win, the parade and everything drew people back together again. And this season, it just feels like they're drifting apart again. That's just reminded me, Brendan Johnson didn't even come off the bench again, did he? It's just weird the way it's working, isn't it? Some of the players that have kind of had the most success on the pitch aren't even getting minutes. But yeah, I think nobody really wants to jump on the old cycle of Spurs doom. So something needs to change quickly for Thomas Frank, and it needs his team to succeed Otherwise, that wheel of Tottenham misfortune spins around again, and we know where it goes, and it's so boring. It is so boring. But if they continue down this path, it's only going to end one way, and it makes the summer decision all the more mad. And I genuinely, we were thinking about it. I don't even know where you would go from that if that were to happen. I don't know if there's anyone available right now. Everyone kind of claims about getting people out of other clubs, but I don't know at this point in the season how easy and achievable that is. So I don't know. Primarily, I want Thomas Frank to succeed. There's a guy in there with really good intentions, and I still don't know what Thomas Frank Tottenham is. I don't know what his system is. I know he says it's about pressing and working hard and all that sort of stuff, which, to be honest, is most managers' system nowadays. But I don't see that all the time. I didn't see there was some terrific pressing against PSG. I didn't really see much of it at all today or last night. So yeah, I think we need to know what his system is. I think we need to know what his Tottenham is, and quickly. They need to start creating chances, scoring goals, winning games, and starting to tighten up at the back a bit. And again, it's the silly mistakes. How often do we talk about Spurs and the silly mistakes? It's just mad. But there you go. A late night moan, a tired rant, another one for the collection. Saw some really nice Spurs fans today as well. It's always in the depths of despair when kind of you had nice little chats with Spurs fans. Some that come over from the other side of the world, and some that sounded like they live locally anyway. But ultimately, we've all gone to the same place and saw the same pants performance. Right, I'm off to Newcastle. We've got a press conference Monday. Off to Newcastle on Tuesday. Ooh, goodness, I don't know what that's going to be like. And I'll probably do the video. It'll have to be Wednesday night when I get back in, I think. So we'll have a chat about that one, and hopefully it's not in a similar vein. Hopefully it's in the weird, like, what's this Jekyll and Hyde team? How have they done this now? That would be fine. I'd be happy to do one of those. If only they could then win against Brentford and break that, like the Conte spell they had when it was win-loss, 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 and it was really weird. Right, time to head off. I need to finish a tiny bit of work, and then I'm going to bed before the sunlight comes through the blinds. Right, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.